I'm really enjoying myself these days. This is the first time that I've ever gone through a process in which I teach each type by itself. And yesterday was something that I recognized deeply. I did a manifesting program and a generating program. And I understand both of them really well. And when I say I understand them, I'm not talking about my understanding of the knowledge. I'm just talking about how they feel to me, because I'm an energy type and they're similar. My life is full of projectors, and I have no idea what it feels like to be you. I have no idea. And it's something very important for you to understand how different you are from the majority that you live amongst. The majority of humanity, 80% of humanity, are energy types. Energy types, and they dominate the world that we live in. And the fact that the world is dominated by energy types means that all of you have been more deeply conditioned by energy types than anything else. None of which is healthy for you. None of it. All of which leads to you living out lives that have nothing to do with who you really are or what the real potential is in the nature of what it is to be a projector. In my work, I've put a great deal of focus on the majority. That is, 70% of humanity are generators. And they're basically what creates the pattern for all of us, including myself as a manifester. It's one of the things to be so clear about what it means to be a non-energy type, or what it means to be a projector in comparison to the majority. In human design, through type, we're able to understand a basic genetic matrix, and out of that matrix we're able to provide strategies. Those strategies allow us in essence to surrender. In other words, they allow us to live our lives as ourselves and to get to see that life as yourself eliminates resistance. For an energy type, that's something that they can experiment moment by moment by moment by moment by moment by moment by moment. They can experiment with it all the time. When I say to a generator, wait to respond, life is responding. Every second, every moment that they're conscious, they have an opportunity to experiment with their strategy, and their strategy is wait, their strategy is respond. So when I say that to people who are coming to this knowledge and they're generators, and I say to them, you know, here's the experiment, try this, I know they can try it right away. I know that they can get into that experiment right away. But you can't. It's very, very different to be a projector. The strategy, and I'll talk about it, your strategy, that very special strategy of waiting for the invitation, that's not something that operates on a moment by moment by moment by moment basis. It doesn't. You can walk out of here if you're, somebody who comes for the first time and they hear about that, you can walk out of there and say, okay, I'm going to experiment with my strategy as a projector. I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to wait for the invitation. You can wait for years. Years. Because that isn't any kind of mundane invitation. It's about things that really matter in your life. What you do, where you go, who you're with, where you live. The basic things, the most important things. Because that's the only place in which your strategy will allow you something very special. It'll allow you to find exactly the correct energy types that you can be with and survive without being negatively conditioned. It's potentially possible to wake up an energy type very quickly. It's very difficult to do so with a projector. It's one of the most fascinating things to understand about the relationship of what I am as a type and what you are as a type. For most of human history, humanity was guided by manifestors. They were guided by manifestors who are 9% of the population. Remember, projectors are 20% of the population. They're the second largest type group. But manifestors are the only type that have the capacity to act independently. And for a very long time, that was a key to the way in which we progressed in terms of our evolution of our civilization. The result of that was that manifestors created the law. That is, they created all kinds of laws, both civil and moral. Laws that say things like you have free will, laws that say things like, you know, it is up to you and you are responsible and you can get it done and so forth and so on. Manifestors lost their power about 220 years ago. About 220 years ago we had a major change take place. This is a changing of the guard. That is, the future is supposed to be, as far as I know, in the hands of projectors. That projectors are on the ascendancy and have been so since that time. But more than that, to understand that because projectors are on the ascendancy, they have a more difficult time than anybody else as an adult to wake up. I have no problem with projector children coming into the world and they are properly raised, because they won't be conditioned negatively. But for the adult projector, you are the most deeply conditioned people on the planet. You're the most deeply conditioned people on the planet, and that means that the not self, the way that you've lived out your life, the way that you deal with the world, that all of that is something that is embedded in you and is not you. And it's very difficult to get rid of it, and it's very difficult to get rid of it because you need it. You are a non-energy type. It is essential for you always to find a way to either generate or manifest. And that means that you spend your lives, you know, conditioned by generators mostly, you know, and in being conditioned that way, you live off that energy. You survive off that connection. That's neither positive or negative. It's not about you taking and they give. You give back because you become a super slave. You know, this is the fate of projectors. The fate of projectors is that they become super slaves. And they become super slaves to the energy forces around them. They get burnt out, they get exhausted. You know, they end up wondering what it's all about. And they're the busiest people on the planet. They're incredibly busy. I had a young projector friend of mine, a student of mine from America. And he was very much in love with human design and trekked across the ocean to find me when I was living in Ibiza, and came to visit me, and I let him put a tent up on my property. And he was a projector that had no motors defined. He was very open, strong mental definition. And one day I took him down to the beach with me. And you know, the summertime on the island, the beaches are hot, and it's, you know, it's hot. Most people are just lying out there paralyzed. You know, you can barely move, baking in the sun. And here's this projector lying beside me, and every few minutes he would jump up and go running into the sea. I said to him, you know, you're a projector. You know, he could barely go up the mountain that night, and he was exhausted. I didn't see him for about 12 hours later, fortunately for me. Anyway, it's one of the things to recognize about what it is to be a projector. The fact that you don't have your own generating capacity, the fact that you don't have your own manifesting capacity, means that when you do get those things, when you come in contact with them, you don't just take them in, you amplify them. You amplify them. And of course, it's this amplification that's so distorting in your life. It makes you feel like you're something that you're not. And then you become dependent on the thing that you're not. And then you come and see me.